Look at this, and I think we kind of all have containers in our lives, don't we? And we can decide what to put in our containers. Some of our containers might be different sizes. Some of them might be big, some small. Some might look like, what is this, a Bunnykins? Some of them might look like a Bunnykins mug. But we all have these different size containers in life, and we decide what to put in these containers as we go through life. We decide what to fill our containers with. And sometimes we put stuff in our containers that we think is going to fill us, but it leaves us feeling empty, like we haven't put anything in no matter how much we put in. It feels like we need more. Sometimes we put stuff in that seems simple and small, and we're surprised that it fills our container. And it doesn't take very much. Today we're focusing on an encouragement that the Apostle Paul gave to Timothy. He says that generosity with contentment is great gain. Godliness, excuse me. His advice was based on something he knew was true then and is still true today. People tend to fill their containers with the wrong things. So he gives advice that I think today we really need to take to heart. When you fill your container with the right stuff, contentment follows. Now, just a regular, ordinary dictionary definition of contentment is this. It's a state of happiness or satisfaction. Contentment is about the content in our containers. And I'm curious about that word, content, because it's the same word as content. You can hear the difference in conversation, but you can't see the difference. You only know the difference by context. These are two words that were one word in English a long time ago, and they diverged. It used to mean holding the contents together like this image of a bucket of water, and you don't want it to slosh out. That was one word back in the day, not like when I was a kid, but a long time ago. Content is the stuff. It's the things that are held or included in something. That's the definition of content. It's the stuff in the container. Content is how you feel about the stuff in the container. The satisfaction that you have or the state that you find yourself in. Content is how you feel about the stuff, the content in your container. So the scripture today invites us to ask us questions about our containers. Are we content with the content of our containers? Paul of 1 Timothy, this is a letter to Timothy and the church in Ephesus, and he is aware that there are people in the church, false leaders he calls them, false teachers, who are offering bad content for people's containers. It was content that left them feeling empty. And it pushed them in the opposite direction of the teaching of Jesus. It was content that was fixated on details that in the end didn't matter about life at all, made no difference to anyone's life, or had nothing to do with following Jesus. You get this picture in 1 Timothy about this endless bickering that's going on with these teachers, about little theological details that don't matter, about this spirituality that doesn't touch life, like if you lose your finger in this life, is it waiting for you up in heaven? This is like a crash test dummies thing, I think, if you guys know who that is. Or genealogies, right? This was a thing for them. Did Abraham's third cousin twice removed, have a secret vision that changes everything about salvation? They would discuss things like that. That's what they were interested in. Dietary restrictions. If you are a Christian that eats pork, do you get a smaller upgrade in heaven once you're there? These things were important to them. They were arguing about these things. And their teacher devalued the practical, the physical, and emphasized this spiritual world that was just out of touch with reality. It was teaching that could pray for someone's hunger, but walk away and leave them hungry. That would emphasize the soul, but leave someone cold and vulnerable. It was talk about heaven that would ignore life on earth. It was fixation on spiritual experience without the experience of the Spirit in life. And it was problematic because for Paul, good teaching always increased love for God and others in a tangible way. And ironically, these teachers who were fixated on this otherworldly spirituality were also fixated on their own wealth and success in this world. They were disconnected from the realities of everyday life, from care for others, yet they found a way to care for themselves in a very unhealthy way. So this is a real crisis for Paul. He wants to get to the root of this. These leaders who are trying to get rich, trying to get wealthy, and creating a following to fill their own containers. And Paul wants to call an end to this because they are hurting people and making a mockery of the gospel of Jesus Christ. So we move to chapter 6, and he confronts these false teachers, and he moves from pointing out the problem to pointing to the truth, to the solution. So he says, yet. So he's talked about these teachers, says, yet. In 1 Timothy 6:6, this is what he says. Yet true godliness with contentment is itself great wealth. In other words, the way they are filling their containers, the contents they are putting in will leave you feeling empty. Like you always need more. Yet, if you pursue things of true godliness, if your container is filled with love that comes from a pure heart, a clear conscience, and genuine faith, you will be content. That is the content that makes you content. And he goes on to talk about simplicity. He continues with a statement of fact that we might recognize about life, hinting at what kind of contentment really works. He says in verse 7 and 8, after all, we brought nothing with us when we came into the world, and we can't take anything with us when we leave it. So, if we have enough food and clothing, let us be content. It's a reminder about the simple things in life, right? About simplicity, how important simplicity is, and what matters in life. We tend to make things really complicated, but it's usually surprising the simple things in life that fill us up. We usually remember the simple things. Things of relationship, things that build memories together. Good memories, maybe when you had nothing. We have in our family this myth going around in our family that we were so poor, we had to make our own butter. Now, it wasn't even true. It wasn't even true. We did make our own butter for fun. You take whipping cream and you shake it until it separates into buttermilk and butter, and you add salt. But somehow our kids took this story and said we were so poor, we couldn't even afford to buy butter. But the thing is, it was a very simple thing to do, but it's such a good memory for them, that simple, simple thing. It's the simple things in life. The times together, the building of relationships, simple things done with love and a clear conscience are things that fill our containers. You don't need much to be content. Just the basics. A little whipping cream, shake it, and you got butter. Just the basics. He goes on to warn in verses 9 and 10, but the people who long to be rich fall into temptation and are trapped by many foolish and harmful desires that plunge them into ruin and destruction. For the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil, and some people craving money have wandered from the true faith and pierced themselves with many sorrows. he notes that the tendency people have is not to value the simple things. The tendency people have is to look for more and more content for the container and try to fill it up with things that don't satisfy. Wanting to keep filling, looking for stuff, endlessly chasing. So chasing after wealth to fill containers. The more you pour into your container of the wrong stuff, the more you need to pour in. So he says money, the love of money leads to ruin because you always need more. It is never enough because basically it actually does not satisfy. It leads to an empty container. He calls it the root. The love of money is the root of evil. So let's be clear though. Money itself is not evil. It's the love of money. You can love money and not have it. You can have money and not love it. The love of money is the root of all evil. It's not about the content in your bank account. It's about being content with your bank account. So the Bible over and over again warns about the love of money because the love of money displaces the love of people. The more we love money, the less room we have for love of people. Now, I realize that this love of money thing, we can make it into a cartoon really easily. Creating an image of a person sitting at home counting bags of coins. That's not me. I don't count coins at home. I don't love money. Let's try to make it a bit real. Let's try to get a little uncomfortable. Okay, you guys, let's get a bit uncomfortable together with this. You ready to embrace this? Okay, good. We can all love money and dream about it and love it and be captive to the things that money promises that we can do with money. It's not about loving the bills and the coins. It's the things money promises it will give to us. The love of things that money can put in our container. Recreation, travel, possessions, fine dining. All of those things are connected to the love of money. And Paul says some things in this passage that are really hard to hear if we let them be. They create tension in us. And I think they're supposed to be uncomfortable, not something we should say, that person over there loves money, not me. If we let him. First of all, he makes a statement about being content. Godliness with contentment is great gain. The love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. And yes, I can get on board with that saying. It would look really good on a Christian bookmark or a coffee mug. I love godliness more than money. I could walk around with that on my shirt even. That would be pretty good. I get it. But right on, Paul. I'm with you. Those other people, we need to pray for them. But then there's living like we agree with it. That's when it gets more uncomfortable for me. And I'm wondering that maybe it might get uncomfortable for you too, because sometimes you can measure how much you agree by how much you let it cost you. It's one thing to agree with what he says. It's another thing to live like we agree with it. Contentment is like this thing that we can have and it's free. It's like he's saying that this type of contentment makes you hugely wealthy, incredibly so, and is better than having tons of money. But money, pursuing it, wanting more of it, that is dangerous business that leads to all sorts of things. And it will never leave you content. There are some deep difficulties that go along with this question. If we actually try to agree with it and live with it, the idea of not loving money. And I invite you to ask this question: am I one of those people who love money? Do I love money too much? What am I trying to fill my container with? The solution to all of this is godliness with contentment. 1 Timothy 6, he says godliness, and he uses this word 9 times in this short little book, and it means living with a deep reverence for God that shapes your entire life and outlook, inside and out. It says active devotion flowing from this awe of Christ and what he's done, not just rules and show. That godliness has value in the present for the future promise of glory. So therefore, we labor and strive, he says, because we have hope in Jesus. For Paul, godliness always starts with grace. The grace poured out and offered as a free gift to fill our containers, the most important content to make us content. But we need to realize something. Paul took this word grace and gave it new meaning. He didn't invent the word. It was an important word in the culture of his time. It was connected to the system of giving that they had. They didn't have social insurance. They didn't have welfare. They didn't have EI. None of that. They had a system of giving that was about patronage and clients. And most of the society was very, very poor. And a few controlled all the resources. We're not talking about bank accounts. We're actually talking they controlled the food and resources. Literally controlled it. So if you were poor, living day to day, you needed a patron. So you would find a rich person to align yourself with, and they would become your patron, and they would offer you grace. It was a grace that was this agreement that you supported them in politics and basically gave your life to them. You owed them for this gift. So Paul riffs on that word grace. Takes it and gives it new meaning. Grace is the free gift of life offered in and through Jesus that has no obligations. It's a gift that offers and invites to be family with the King. It's a gift that heals and forgives. It's a gift of eternal life. It's all the same word. But it starts in the here and now and carries forward to the life after life. The system of grace for the Romans was all about the physical, giving to the poor with strings attached. But the important thing to realize about grace for Paul, it's not limited to spiritual things. It is also physical things. With grace, the spiritual and the physical cannot be separated. If you have it just spiritual, you end up like the Romans. But if it's just spiritual, if you have it just physical, you end up like the Romans. That was very important that we distinguish this. Physical, you end up just like the Romans. If you have it spiritual, just spiritual, you end up like the false teachers. These two things are in tension. And grace is both. So the spiritual change he wants to bring is to bring those two things together, to align grace. And giving and grace are deeply connected for Paul. Grace isn't foggy theology that you just grasp for, but it's this practical thing, God's radical gift that leads to overflowing and practical giving, generosity. So the solution to those false teachers is an understanding of grace that is all about life in the present as well. Not just this foggy theological mist we're trying to grab and talk about. So grace is the answer, and false teachers didn't understand grace because they made it spiritual, and the Romans didn't understand it because they made it all physical. But Paul says if you want to be content, start with the grace that has been offered to you, and it will change everything about you. It changes what you put in your container. Changes what you desire. It changes what you put in other people's containers. And it leads to generosity. And people become more important than stuff. Are you content with the content in your containers? There's a good struggle that I hope you're feeling the tension of. It's the struggle of, do I love money a little too much? If you are asking that question, it is good. We should all be asking that question and struggling with it. Embrace that tension. Because the truth is, the love of money isn't a yes or no, it's a spectrum. We are all on it somewhere. Somewhere we're on it. All of us are probably loving it a bit too much. And loving God and people a little too little. So we need to move in the direction of grace and godliness. Now here's some tension moments. Just to make it a bit more uncomfortable in case you want some more discomfort. Should I be spending money on this new car? It's a good question. I'm not going to answer that for you. It's a good question. Live in that tension. Embrace it. Should I be spending so much of my money on recreation? I don't know. Should you? You should ask that question. Embrace it. Sit in that tension. Should I be spending my money on more luxury? Like butter? Sit in that tension. I don't think there's a clear answer for a lot of these questions. But if you are seeking contentment by putting more stuff in your container, you will need more and more and a bigger container. You'll have to upgrade your container. Pretty soon you'll have a sea can. You probably love money too much. Paul is telling us the contentment and content people share freely and generously with others. This is a sign of a content person, is a person that can be generous with others. And their containers become not just about themselves, but about actually using them to fill other people's containers. And in doing that, they become content with the content in their containers. I think we're probably all well aware that stats and studies over and over and over again demonstrate that the greatest happiness scores are not related to money. As a matter of fact, it's probably inverse relationship with money and happiness or contentment. Over and over again, the wealthiest people are not the happiest people in the world. It's the other way around. The more stuff you have, the more time you need to spend with your stuff. You have dates with your stuff. Over and over again, the happiest people, the most content, are the ones who live in simplicity, in good relationships, and are generous with other people. For contentment, you don't need a bigger container. You need the right contents. Right? Small dinner plates, which I struggle with. I love big dinner plates. But small dinner plates are more satisfying because you put better contents on the small plate. It's healthier. It's more satisfying. That's the spectrum for me. Small dinner plate right here. What kind of content are we putting in our containers? Are we putting people before stuff? The stuff that fills our containers is walking with people in relationship. That'll fill your container. Sharing life with others as they struggle and go through joys, that fills your container. Loving people well, that will fill your container. Oh, and letting people love you, that also fills your container. Sharing equals filling. So I think Paul, who is just obsessed with grace, this grace word, we need to understand that for Paul, grace is not this thing that's up in the spirit world. It's the spirit world and the physical coming together all the time. And if we receive grace, we act with grace in life and become a generous people. That's what grace is. It's more than just this metaphysical mist that we're trying to grab onto. It's connected to our whole selves. It's how we live. It's how we give. It's caring. It's sharing with others. Are we content with the content in our containers. Godly contentment is being content with the content given by God's grace. And when we are content, we freely share generously with others because we realize it's not ours, it's a gift given to us. And we want to be like that. That's a sign of contentment. Helping others' containers be filled. There is no telling, I think, what God could do in a church that gets generosity. I don't think it has to be a wealthy church financially to be generous. There is a spirit of generosity that changes lives that I think all of us are being called to. A spirit of sharing what's in our containers. Be content with the content in your life. Because when grace fills it, it can't help but overflow. Be content.